Okay, so I just want to create a quick video here, a brief overview of the Timewave Explorer software, just to give some basic documentation on how to use it, what some of the features are, and whatnot. I'll be creating some more thorough documentation at some point in the future, but for now, I think for people who know what the Timewave is, who kind of have a general idea how it works, I think I just want to put this out there, put this software out there, and let folks kind of poke around with it and explore the Timewave. Okay, so when you go to the website, the first thing you get is the login page, and you can either log in as a guest or you can create an account. Creating an account, it's free. It's just a matter of, you put in your email address and it'll send you a link to set your password. And the only difference between creating an account and entering as a guest is that the guest account is read only. You can't save anything. But if you create an account, it'll let you save stuff. So anyway, I'll use well, let's see. We'll just use the guest account for now. Okay, so when you log in, you're greeted with the user interface. Over here on the left pane, we have like the settings and the parameters. The main pane is, of course, the Timewave itself. At the heading, we have information about what we're looking at, the span of time, and the toolbar for navigating, some various statistics or detailed numbers on the bottom. And then on the right hand side, we have the actual pane that's going to show us events. So as we scan around, we'll see that there's events that we can overlay on the graph. And one thing to note is you can hide these sidebars with these little collapsers at the top, and then they can be expanded by clicking the side there. So we'll start by looking at the left-hand pane over here. I should unhide myself so we can see it all, or I should hide myself. Okay. So yeah, over here on the left, we have the Timewave parameters. Now these are the actual parameters that derive how the wave is generated and how it's displayed. So that's the 0 date, the actual point in time where the wave goes to 0, the point of ultimate novelty. The number set, it lets you select kind of one of the standard for, eventually I'd like to have it so you can upload your own or somehow set it, but for now you pick from the standard 4. And then there's the wave factor, a really kind of nitty-gritty internal parameter on the it's actually on the fractal transform function. I'm not sure how useful it is to mess with it, but you're welcome to, because that's what this is all about. And then there's the display range. Now this is this is kind of one way you can set the window of time that you're looking at on the graph. So you can either do it by selecting time span, and each of these you pick a duration of time that's, and the unit is amount of time prior to 0 date. So 10 years. What shows up by default is 10 years, so it's just December 21st, 2000, which is 10 years prior to the 0 date, and then the windows end right at the 0 date 0. Except that's not what we're looking at because I bumped it over. But if we apply it, that's what you got. Okay, and then the other way that you can pick your range is by just selecting explicit dates. So if you wanted to, you can just pick specific dates. But so obviously there's limitations, like you can't really pick a date like 4 billion years in the past. So if, like, say I want to go to the beginning, I want to go to the Big Bang, I would type in 13.8, and then the drop down lets you just add a multiplier. So you can say 13.8 billion years. So there you go, the full span of the universe since the Big Bang. And then finally, just the options down here. I'm going to have to come up with a better way to use these, but they're just settings that affect the user interface. So you can change the mouse cursor, you can set some parameters on how quickly it zooms in and out and shifts left and right. Okay, so let's look at the stats pane. Down below the graph, we have some information that shows you some of the numbers that are being shown in the graph. So the left, the row that says left, that shows you information about the left-hand side of the graph. The right shows you the right-hand side, and then in between, we have, you'll see as I move the mouse around, it changes, and it actually shows you where, it shows you the numeric information about from where you're hovered over. And there's a little black line here that shows you precisely where it is. So yeah, as you move around, you see it. And then the marker, if you click on the graph, you'll see it puts you can drop a marker down, and then this row tells you the exact number values. So yeah, I should explain. So the date is just the date, of course. The days to zero date is just the date in terms of the zero date. So this is 2 trillion days something before 2012. And then the value is just the actual numerical value of the graph at that point. So that's the y value. So basically x values, these two, and then the y value. And then over here, it just shows you so the minimum and maximum on the specific window that you're looking at. So you'll see that the max, and you can even click on these and it moves the marker. The maximum point of the graph in this window is at 12.23 billion years. And the minimum is always, of course, the zero date itself, which is way at the end. That's more useful if you're not looking at the whole thing. See, if we move over a little bit, we can see the minimum is actually before the Big Bang in this case. Okay. Okay, so let's look at the actual graph itself. Now, you can see, as I mentioned earlier, as you move around, the cursor shows you where your mouse is. And if that gets on your nerves, if you don't like it, you can click on this option over here. Here, I'll hide myself. The mouse cursor. If I turn that off, it goes away. So if that's your preference, there you go. I kind of like it there. So now, as I mentioned, when you click on it, you get the marker. You can move the marker around. And the way that you can get rid of the marker is you hit the escape key. It removes it. Now, let's go look at the toolbar. So you can zoom in and out with these buttons. Let's see, so zoom out, you can just keep clicking it, get you bigger and bigger picture. And you zoom in, and the way that the zoom in works is it zooms into the center of the graph of your current window. So you can kind of see that, how it's working. Now, if you don't have a marker down. If you put down a marker, like say I want to zoom into this valley here, I put down my marker, it recenters it. And so then you can keep zooming in on that. And let's see, like I said, if you want to get rid of the marker, you hit escape. Yeah, and so if you want to change how quickly it zooms in and out, like at each click, that's what the option over here on the left, zoom percent. So if you want to make it zoom more quickly, you can make that say 40%. and then you'll see that it jumps a lot more quickly at each click. You get a lot more, you know. So, but I tried to put in reasonable defaults here. So yeah, the next way that you can kind of move around your window is these pan left and pan right buttons. Pretty straightforward. It just bumps you left or right by some amount, and similarly to the zoom, that's what the shift percent is here. If you wanted to bump over more quickly, you can bump this up, so it makes bigger jumps. 10% seemed pretty good. Yeah, that nudges left and right. And now I wanted to point out some alternative controls. I actually wired up some keyboard controls so that if you do left and right with your keyboard, it bumps it. It does the same thing as the button up here. And if you do up and down, it does the same thing as the zoom. So you can kind of have a little keyboard navigation. Also, it's kind of a cool feature is you can use the mouse wheel. So if you're hovering over the graph, it'll zoom in and out when you scroll up or down. And by the way, it works the same way as if you just click the buttons. So an up scroll is just like one click of the zoom in, and a down scroll is one click of the zoom out. And I messed with actually having it so like it recenters where your mouse is. Like if I wanted to zoom into that point, but it's kind of it's awkward having it jump all around like that. So I found like if you want to zoom in on a certain point, click on it, and then you can zoom in, and it stays in the center. Oh, okay. So then let's continue on our looking at the toolbar. You notice I skipped over this undo. This is just a really convenient little button to let you kind of step back. So whenever you make a change by either zooming in, zooming out, or setting the window through running the display range, clicking the apply over here, it actually stores what you were looking at just before. So notice I just zoomed out to look at the whole 13.8 billion years, but I can go back to where I was by clicking undo. So it just maintains a history of where you were looking, just so you can kind of more freely navigate without worrying about losing a good spot. And then finally, we have the resonance buttons here. So we can go up or down in resonance. Now that's kind of a technical thing about the Timewave, but I can briefly explain it. So let's look at, just for giggles, let's look at the year of my birth, 1980. So I'll pick January 1st, 1980, and then you can just copy it. Let's just go from January 1st, 1980 to January 1st, 1981. There's that year. So one thing that's interesting about the Timewave is the patterns repeat periodic. It's a fractal. So this exact pattern exists way in the past at a much larger scale. So to go see what that is, you can go up to the next higher resonance. So the period of the year of 1980, it resonates, is in resonance, or that's just what we call it, with 98 BC to 34 BC. So that's a little over half a century. But notice that's the same pattern. You can go back and see that's what we're looking at. So you can go, basically it's an exponential thing. So you multiply by 64 to go up a resonance, and you divide by 64 to go down a resonance. So you can look at it how it resonates, 98 BC, 4 millennia, a span of 4 millennia starting 135,000 years ago, and so on. You keep going. And you go down, you can even see like, okay, there's 1981 resonates with 5 days a span of 5 days in June of 2012. So that's kind of a cool feature, like a really cool way. So once we get the events on here, I think that'll be even more interesting. Okay, I've zoomed us out to the full 13.8 billion year timeline, and to show the events feature. So if you open up the pane here on the right, you could see a bunch of items listed, and as you move around, if you zoom in and out or you move left and right, you can see stuff appear and disappear from this list. And what this list is events in the database that are significant events in time that are on the range within the date range that you're looking at. And if you click Show Events up here, it creates markers on the graph itself, so you can see they're numbered so that you can tie them. But if you click on it, it shows you some more information about it, and it highlights the marker. And if you you can zoom in on it and see. So yeah, and so you'll notice some of them are grouped, because if you have a bunch of stuff that happened in a short period of time, it groups them into one marker, and you can zoom in on those to see them kind of break apart. So you got the solar system formation, you got the Earth formation, you got the moon, all here on this downward slope, which is what we'd expect. Oh, and I forgot to mention another way you can zoom in, I neglected earlier, is if you drop a marker. Oh, notice it's a little quirky how the markers interact. So let's hide those. So if you drop a marker and you hold down Shift, you'll see the cursor changes into a little magnifying glass. Hold down Shift and click somewhere else. You basically just set the window of the zoom. So basically, I clicked here. Those two boundaries are now the boundaries of the graph. So that's kind of handy. So as a guest user, I can only view them. But if I have an account, if I've created an account, I actually have the ability to add them. So let me go ahead and log out and log in as a with my test user. So so now I have a button here that lets you create a new event. So let's see here. Let's say I have a significant event that happened here on October 31st, 2006. So if I click on, I don't have to click on the graph to pick a date, but I can. So I click on that. Now I can click New Event. Now it lets me type in, actually type in the information for it. So let's say significant event. This is event I created. We have the ability to add tags. This isn't really integrated into the user interface very well, like what the actual tags are, but I figure over time we'll want to be able to kind of categorize and sort these events. Like for example, I have a tag for the geological. Well, I thought I did, but that's an example of a tag. But let's say this is a personal event, and I want to put it on the graph. I can provide a link, which is like, for example, all of the geological events. We have a link to the Wikipedia page that shows the chronology of when the moon started to form, when the Earth started to form, things like that. These are all optional, actually. The only things that are required are the title and the date. So the way that you pick a date, it's broken out into year, month, and day. If you need to put in a BC date, you can click over here and select BC. and then it drops it figures you don't need to specify a month and a year or a month and a day for a date 2,000 years in the past. But it does let you pick a multiplier. So like if so you don't have to type out a bunch of zeros if you want to say that something happened 1,000 or a billion years in the past. It lets you conveniently do that, or you just say no multiplier. But anyway, let's leave the date October 31st, 2006, and then if you're actually, the event you're describing is a span of time and not just a singular event, you can put in the end date. This actually doesn't affect the display currently because it's just, everything is just a single marker on there. But eventually I want to implement a feature that'll actually let you look at spans, because this will make a lot more sense for things that are like, oh, here was the Roman Empire start and fall, so you can look at the full span on the graph. But that's a future feature. But I figure we might as well start tracking the we might as well put the information in there for later for adding that feature. Anyway, so I filled that all out. This option here at the top, visible to other users, if you want it to be shared and show up on other people's, when other people are logged in under their own user accounts, if you want them to be able to see it, click visible to other users. But for example, if this is like just a personal one, like if it's my aunt's birthday or something, I just want to leave it unchecked. But certainly if you're putting some historical event there that has significance that's not in the database, by all means, visible to other users. Check that. So I click submit, goes in the database. There it is, except I need to actually put it on the graph. There it is, number 1, significant event I created. Now I can actually go in and alter it, this little button. So let's see. Notice if I expand this one, it doesn't have a button I can edit. I can't mess with that one. But this one, since I created it, I can always go back and mess with it, or I can even delete it. And it's gone. And I think that is the conclusion of my demonstration. I hope you enjoyed it. There is, so actually it's what I want to mention. There are some quirks I still need to work through. Like when you're using the marker and you're also have events on there, it gets a little funky. I need to go in and correct that. But you can always hide the events and and put them back. And oh yeah, so it's fully open source, free and open source software. If you go up here to the actual doc website, and you go to about, or wait, it was built by me. Yeah. Floss, the source code is available. So if you go to about, you can get a link to the actual repository, so you can see all of the source code. And then I think that's it. That's it. So eventually I'd like to I want to add more details about how the Timewave is generated, and maybe even do a tour of the source code. And I definitely want to do a video that shows you how to set up the dev environment so that you can mess with this if you're into coding at all. But for now, we got the basics set up. So thank you very much. Enjoy. Oh, and don't hesitate to, if you find an issue, you can create an issue in the repository.